I think I'm going to do a live update. Though I really don't prefer to do that, because I was going to prepare for the next teaching, which I hope to do tomorrow, which is Kings 17. And there are a few things as I was getting ready to teach that are going to be very important. And I don't want to miss getting those important things. I could give like a little preview, I guess. But there's a particular miracle that we're going to read about that Elijah the prophet does in Kings 17 in our study. And why is that miracle important? It's the raising of the child from the dead. And it's important because Jesus himself will speak about that in the Gospels. In Luke, I think it's chapter 4. And there's a connection because we say in the Bible, I could teach it now, but I wanted to do a better job on it. But we say the Bible is full of miracles. And Elijah raises the woman's son from the dead, the woman that God had used to provide for Elijah. He makes an interesting statement. I didn't even read it. I was going to study it tonight. But he says, why did you bring evil also upon this lady? And the great prophet's talking about God using him to speak that there's going to be no rain. But yet he perceived what God had done was judgment, that it was evil, meaning he knew God used him to bring a judgment on that land. And so when the son died, he said, her too. And that's the first resurrection in the Bible. Okay? King 17. And I know I already am going to add a link on the resurrections in the Bible. And then Jesus is going to speak about that in his ministry. And it's significant, okay? I hope I get to teach that. But it's significant that he's going to use that because that's going to be a very important sign down the road to the people that he's speaking that to in Luke 4. Okay? So, that's just a little... I read a couple of news. I just finished reading the newspaper, and I watched the news. It's interesting because this is just like I call it the update. So that means I'm going to go ahead and upload this in a minute and share it, even though I already put some videos up. The Trump thing, he surprised because he had the leaders of the Democrats and Republicans, and he kind of tricked them, I guess, because he said, we're going to meet, and I saw clips of it yesterday, and he said, we're going to meet, and by the way, we're going to let the cameras be live. Look, that's very risky to do, and it could have put them all on the spot. And some say he talked live with them, allowing the media to be there. And some media were like, this is tremendous, and others, there's all types of questions why Mr. Trump did that. Did he want to show himself as mentally stable because of the book and all these other things? Either way, it's some of the stuff that he talked about is stuff I mentioned. I said, look, Trump wants to make the, quote, DACA kids that came here when they were very young, he wants to pass that and make it permanent, make it legal. He does want to do that. I could just tell from the progression of things and statements that he's made. And so it was interesting that took place. And I think it was good. And I won't do the analysis, I think, is simply he's saying, look, we can get some stuff done. I want to get some stuff done. That's what he's saying. The local scene. I just read recently in Corpus Christi, we're redoing the bridge. We have a beautiful bridge right now. It's called the Harbor Bridge. I was hoping to teach somewhere in that area tomorrow on the King's 17. And, of course, we have a port here, Port of Corpus Christi, and it's a good port. And so for many years they wanted to, you know, widen it and make it deeper, and we could get, you know, more bigger ships coming in and so forth, tankers. And so part of that was to coincide with, we're going to build a new bridge, okay? And as I looked at that over the last year, I thought, it's going to be a long thing, and it might extend further than they were thinking, and then they're going to tear down the way the bridge is now. And that bridge, you know, for whatever reasons, the age of the bridge, but the new one's going to be a bigger bridge. And as I looked at it, and my feeling on this, it's going to be a long ways down the road, okay? The process, they already started tearing one of the bridges down called Comanche Street, I believe, meaning they're getting ready for the new thing, and they got to start that, and people are complaining. My sense is this is not going to work out well. Okay? That's my sense. That it's going to be a long thing. It's already, the port initially put like $30 million of their own money. They were seeking federal aid for 25 years, I believe. And then the port of Corpus Christi said, look, we'll pay for the whole thing. 300 and something million. If we have to, this is for the dredging and all, and making the port bigger. And then the Corps of Engineers, there seem to be some questions whether they're still going to get it done in time. The way I'm looking at it, and the lesson I'm thinking is, sometimes it's better to leave well enough alone. We had a famous, I just feel like it's not going to be a good endeavor. It may be in the end when it's all done, but sometimes when people are building, whether it's a city or a natural city, or what you do is, sometimes there are things that you built already, and then you maybe think, we had a beautiful building right here down the corner from me, and it was a bank. It's a beautiful bank building, and I forget which, the Laredo Bank or whatever, but they did such an excellent job. You know, it was, I'm assuming, at least $1 million building because it was beautiful. And then one of the local stores bought it. It's called a corner store, like a little deli grocery. And we thought, oh, maybe they're just going to not waste that beautiful, it was maybe a few $1 million building, the way it was built beautifully. But they tore it down because obviously they, and a lot of times when you're building, sometimes the things that you have built up until that stage, it's better to not, you might have good ideas and say, you know what, we're going to do something else with this. And you think of all the wasted effort, time, and building and stuff that already went into those things. And that's how I feel, that's how I'm sensing about this. We have a lot of postcards with the beautiful, this is a picture of the Brooklyn Bridge. Thankfully it is still there. Okay? I never walked over it yet. This next trip, hopefully I will. So sometimes it's just better to leave things alone. On the PBS NewsHour, and I caught the local, world news and local news, and I don't want to debate global warming. And every person they had on was a strong advocate for climate change and global warming, and I'm not a total denier of it. But there's always questions. And, you know, a few years ago, I can't find that post, but I had read just some articles, scientific articles, and it just talked about the levels of, historic levels of CO2 in the atmosphere and how we are way below what was considered like the danger zone. And when I read it, it was from a scientist, and then I wrote on it. And I said, well, I thought at the time, I said, most people are under the impression that the greenhouse gases and all are way too high of historic levels. And it was actually quite eye-opening that showed the standard in the beginning of the last century, how the levels were much higher. And then the certain effects of, and I just thought, and so when I watched this man just now on PBS, and they talked about it, and they said, and they were trying to explain why the severe cold took place. But even though this one particular scientist they were talking about, he said, well, we are not sure yet, but we believe also climate change is having a particular effect on the jet stream. And as I looked at it, and as they, all of a sudden, it really wasn't the standard model. Okay, some will say they predicted these things. I understand that, okay? But then he said, we're not sure, but we think also climate change could have an effect on the jet stream, and therefore the jet stream. And I thought, a lot of people, I think, are trying to micromanage things that they can't micromanage. And the pollution is a problem. Look, I'm not saying it's not. But as I looked at it, and when we had the big spill, the oil spill in my body of water where I live, which is the Gulf of Mexico, I remember all the predictions, those that go back a few years now. You had a huge, I guess it was BP, but it was huge oils. But it was all coming out from the ground, okay, under the ocean floor. And all the images, look at that pollutant, and they played it live on various news sites for days. We had video of it, and people were under this impression that look at all that man-made oil spilling in, and they didn't realize everything that was spilling into the Gulf from under the seafloor, because it went bad, okay? But all of that was natural. That wasn't oil coming from some refinery or a tanker, which we've had accidents like that. This was natural stuff coming from beneath the ocean floor that was spilling into the ocean. This was stuff that men never had their hands on. You remember that? But the media kind of had so many people just thinking, look at this, look at what man has done, this pollutant. And that, was ingrained, the same thing about. And so as I watched that little show just a little while ago, I thought, whatever happened, the predictions of all of the many, many, many years of disaster, look, that's all done. You know what took care of it? The ocean took care of it. Meaning they said that spill, very famous spill in the Gulf of Mexico, coming up from the ground, okay, under the seafloor. They said it's devastation for years and years. It's done. The ocean did it. We made some attempts to clean it up. Sometimes it's better to just leave things alone. I was with I tried not to speak like I'm going to arrest some, and I'm unable to do that. And I don't like that. And I prefer to say I could go slow, and it's somewhat, you teach, you speak, you preach, if that's what you're called to do. And it's difficult, though, to say, it'd be nice to just rest, to just have a few days. And I'm unable to do that, to be quite honest with you. But I did go see some of my friends yesterday, the homeless people here where I live, the ones you see. And I hung out with them for a little while. And they were sitting on an area, it was behind like a dumpster. One of the spots where they said, and they were at that spot because some new younger kids had come to town, and they're like over there. And so I was just sitting behind the dumpsters talking to them. And I don't drink. Look, I just had my 5-year sober date, January 3rd. But then the cops rolled up, the cop cars, which is fine. And the guys seen them, all cops coming. And they just came back behind the big dumpsters and said, you guys going to have to move. And I was looking at my phone. I said, yeah, that's fine. And then as we were walking away from dumpsters, and there was about 5 of us, then one of the cops said, well, we want, the reason we told you all to move, it seemed like he didn't have to give an explanation. That was really private property back there, and they're not supposed to be sitting behind those dumpsters. But then he said, because one of the girls, he said, because somebody said you were asking for money on the other side of the building, and it just seemed like maybe, and that girl, I won't give her name, but she says, I don't do that. And I don't think she does. I've never seen her, like, we call it panhandling or flying a sign. And she said, I didn't do that. I just walked through the parking lot on the other side. And then I thought maybe some of the officers, maybe they know me, my blogging and stuff. And I thought maybe he didn't realize I was sitting there, and then thought, oh, maybe this guy's going to complain or do video. And he didn't have to give any explanation. And I thought, oh, maybe that's why he kind of said, well, the reason I told you that, everything was fine. They did nothing wrong. And we're at a time, I think, in our country, and I watched some of the stuff about the whole thing that's going on with the Russia collusion. And to me, one of the things that still also, as we should question, what have we come to believe? What certain things have we come to believe? I appreciate all of the online, Facebook, YouTube, which is going to go on YouTube, I guess Facebook too in a minute. And I remember how I read the things that Mark Zuckerberg puts on Facebook. And I remember how former Senator Al Franken, who has since resigned, Democratic senator, and he was witty. And so this made it to the thing, and they were interrogating Facebook and all officials, before Congress, 2 months ago, whenever it was. But they said, how could you have sold Russian ads? Russians who actually bought ads on Facebook, which they did. And he said, and they're paying in whatever it is, rubles, I forget the Russian currency. And he said, and you couldn't connect the dots. And then he was talking to the also to all of the Google and everybody, and he says, and it is your job to connect all these dots. And it was witty and all. And they were like, Facebook and the others were like, well, how could you have sold ads that were purchased, whether they're purchased in currency of Russia or whatever? And people have come to believe, I think they got a bad rap on that, Facebook. People have come to believe Facebook is a global organization. It's not an American organization, okay? It's here in this country, but and countries, including ours, have spent money and time influencing openly other countries' elections. You say, John, we don't do. Of course we do. Mr. Obama himself campaigned in Israel itself when he was president, Mr. Obama, and he campaigned against Benjamin Netanyahu, who won, but he wanted the other guy to win, and this was very open. You say, but that would be the United States interfering in the sovereignty of another country's election. Of course it would be. And that's not illegal. That's not against the law. And if the United States bought a bunch of ads on Facebook to influence a Russian election or anywhere else, none of that is illegal. None of that is against the law. And I find it funny. I would say maybe 90% of this country populace believes the fact that Russia or Russians bought ads. Now the question would be, did the influence, were they fake news ads? The stuff that was released, meaning to influence the U.S. election, the hacking into the emails and stuff of the Democrats, the things that were released were all true stuff. Meaning things that the Democrats, Hillary and others, said to kind of go against Bernie Sanders and all, and then that became public. But that was not false or fake news. It was real stuff. Granted, it had an influence in a way, because people said, oh, she really did do that. But none of those things that were released did Clinton or her people deny. You say, but that's unfair because it released possibly negative information against one campaign while not releasing it against the other. Correct. Which the media does also. The media will focus on a particular side, and possibly truly all of the leaking that we're talking about in the country with various organizations and all. The only, and I watched it on the news just a little while ago, along with the global warming thing, and they continue to say what we need to know is how the Russians, or if the Russians colluded, and collusion is also not a criminal act. Listen to Alan Dershowitz and others. People are believing that it's criminal if, as a citizen, meaning Mr. Trump before he got elected, agreed to do illegal things, which none of it seems to show that he agreed to do anything. And as I watch it, though, we're on that. You see, we're on that trail. People are seeing that one thing. They looked at those who saw when they grilled Facebook employees or Google employees and said, how could you have sold ads? How could you have let a foreign country? That happens to all the people. The only thing that would be illegal, hacking in to, yes, that's illegal, which the United States also does that. And everybody knows that. And we also hack into the computers of other countries. That's part of the world, okay? That's part of the way the world works. And I just see how, if you keep pushing a thing a certain way. And so as far as I could tell, it is really pretty much, there's been a lot of manipulation in the things. And even though you hear Mr. Trump say, no collusion, no collusion, collusion is not illegal. Leaking of information, whether people are leaking, whether it's Mr. Comey who leaked his notes to the New York Times, or whether it's these other guys. And there's a few other things that have come up. Okay, so this is just, I did it just for the benefit of just kind of doing a little update. There's no big Corpus issues. To me, I think I've outgrown Corpus Christi. I have all these wonderful pictures of, I did some work on my vehicle to kind of get it, it's cold though right now. And when I'm up in New Jersey, I go to New York a lot, walking through New York City, because that's where that area is, but it's cold up there because of the global warming. This city, the progression, we had efforts made. A lot of people in South Texas used to think like Corpus Christi was a big city, but for the size of whatever, 360,000. I mean, it's a nice sized city. Our local mall, one of the malls, there are two malls in Corpus Christi. One for years was called Padre Staples. They changed the name to La Palmera, and when they changed it, they tried to, upgrade the mall. They took out one of the most coveted things that I used to like to take my kids to. They had a huge merry-go-round in the Padre Staples Mall. And then when the news came that they were going to remove it, till this day, I think it was a mistake, but they got rid of it. It was huge, and people used to go and pay the $2, and I'd take my kids on it. And it was right in the middle of the mall. Now, the Sunrise Mall, that mall kind of got branded as like a lot of gang activity in that mall. And the Sunrise Mall, which used to be a real thriving mall, I was in it maybe 6 months ago or less, I don't remember. The Sunrise Mall has gone downhill. And again, on the news tonight, this last few days, the biggest attraction at the Sunrise Mall is called the Discount Cinema. And it's got the beautiful marquee, and it's an indoor movie theater, obviously. But you pay like $1.50. A lot of my homeless friends over the years, a lot of them, even non-homeless friends, I used to take my kids to the discount mall. And I did some videos and pictures from the top there of where you park for that movie theater. They're going to close that because the new guy that bought the mall a few years back says we got other plans. And I looked at, they said we're going to change some of the parking spots into retail. I thought, it'll make it look like a flea market if they do. And I'm just wondering. And I thought, don't take the best thing out of that mall, because it has indeed gone downhill over the years. There are some wonderful business people that are still in that mall. But the best thing was the discount movie theater. And even walking past it is the marquee. That's the best thing in that mall. And so they decided we're going to advance, and one of the ways we're going to advance is we're going to not renew the lease. At first, they thought the movie theater was going to move out on their own terms. They said, no, we're not going to renew the lease because they got other plans. The plans for this city, I don't know what the future will hold for it. That particular thing, I like going to North Beach. I like going to doing the video. That's going to be it's going to be many, many years of changes there. And when that's done, that whole very long-term project, they already had someone talking about, we got to do a new development here. This is going to be empty space once the old bridge is. I just think they've made some mistakes. Okay? We had Schlitterbahn Waterpark in Texas. This beautiful city right outside of San Antonio called New Braunfels. It's between San Antonio and Austin. And I've gone with my kids to the water park. It's called Schlitterbahn. And it's beautiful. I think it's the Como River, but it's a beautiful water park. And it's known in this region all over. And then they have one south of us, which is literally the true south of Padre Island. And then there's a Schlitterbahn down there. And a few years ago, they decided they're going to build one here on the island. It's basically gone bankrupt, and they were selling. And a lot of things have just not really gone well. And people want to be progressive and all. And some of the things that are working, there's a scripture that says, strengthen the things which remain, which are ready to die. Strengthen the things which remain, which are ready to die. You know, in a video you have not seen yet, which is the Sunday sermon one that I made this past Sunday. They go up about a week late. And I taught, and it'll go up, how long did I go? But I mentioned, I was talking about history, church history, and I don't always mention the names of teachers I studied under over the years, and I have their stuff. But I remember mentioning, I said, and there's a teacher as I was teaching, I said, his name is R.C. Sproul. And I probably mentioned he was a theologian scholar. And I caught him on the radio, the one I used to broadcast on, KCTA radio. And many, many, many years ago at Far House, I put on the Christian radio as I was checking the trucks, sweeping the floors. And one day I caught him, many years ago. And I said, oh, he's a scholar. And I have some of his CDs and books. But I mentioned him on the Sunday message. He said, R.C. Sproul. Then the next day, I listened to the radio. I don't always catch him on the Christian station at that particular time at 8 in the morning. And I said, okay, I'll catch Brother Sproul. Matter of fact, I think I accidentally had that Christian station on my little Walkman radio. And they said, Brother Sproul recently went home to be with the Lord. I didn't know he died. He just must have died in the last few days or few weeks. They said, we're playing some of his classic messages. And I thought, I used to listen to some other preachers that I didn't know they'd be on the radio. I didn't know they died years ago, few of them. And some other friends of mine would tell me, oh, John, he died so many years ago. I said, I didn't know. I just still saw his show on TV or on the radio. And the scripture that says, though, in Hebrews, though they're dead, or though he's dead, he yet speaks. And it just showed me the theme of, we should do the best we can in the time period that we have. And so I have nothing to criticize about. I know a lot of people have their views of politics, their views of news, their views of many, many things. And it's going to continue to be that way for a long time. But just make sure you finish. That would be the encouragement I would give you. Finish the course that you have given to you. And maybe there's times where you want to rest and say, I think I've done enough. I think I have. And if you're unable to do that, then you just say, well, I guess I won't rest. I guess I'll keep going. And I think some of those statements from Paul, where he says things like, I'm ready to be offered. And Paul was not bipolar, the Apostle Paul. My offering is at hand. So the saints were recognizing that their time period was coming up. They saw that. They weren't grasping hold of, they said, okay, this is the process. And I don't know if we really, live our lives in that way. So whatever, hopefully I'll do the King's teaching tomorrow. You'll see the Sunday sermon. I'll just leave that as the note. There's a particular reason why Elijah, in that chapter, does the first resurrection from the dead recorded in Scripture. That's the first one, okay? And Jesus is going to bring that up in Luke 4, and it's for a particular reason. It's not by accident that he talks about that. Okay? And it fits in with stuff. All right? I'll leave that little mystery and bless you guys. God bless everybody.